the Devil's Mine. The setting. In the summer of 1868, a group of desperate prospectors stumbled upon a secluded valley deep in British Columbia's rugged wilderness. The group was led by Tom Calder, a grizzled veteran of the Cariboo Gold Rush, who had seen more failed claims than successful ones. With him were his younger brother Jesse, the optimistic greenhorn, Simon Smitty Smith, a burly ex-blacksmith, and Ezekiel Price, a devout preacher who had turned to prospecting after his congregation fell apart. Their supplies were low, their morale lower, and it seemed fortune had abandoned them until they found the Devil's Mine. The discovery. The entrance was hidden beneath a thicket of overgrown brush. Jesse tripped over a stone, revealing a small opening that led into a cave. Inside, veins of gold glinted in the lantern light, crisscrossing the walls like veins of fire. The group was elated, and even Ezekiel whispered a prayer of thanks. "This here's a miracle," Jesse said, his voice trembling with excitement. "No," Ezekiel replied, his expression grim as he studied the strange carvings on the cave walls. "This is temptation." The others laughed, but the preacher's unease lingered. The carvings depicted strange, inhuman figures, twisted shapes with elongated limbs and hollow eyes. No one could decipher their meaning, but the lure of gold was stronger than fear. The descent. The first few days were a frenzy of activity. Nuggets the size of fists were pried from the rock, and it seemed their fortunes were made. But as they dug deeper into the mine, strange occurrences began. The voices. Jesse was the first to hear it, a faint whisper like the wind, except it was coming from the solid rock. At first, he dismissed it as his imagination, but soon the whispers grew louder, speaking his name in a low, guttural tone. The shadow, Smitty swore he saw movement in the darkness, a flicker of shadow that didn't belong to any of them. "Probably bats," Tom said, though his voice lacked conviction. Ezekiel began waking in the night, sweating and muttering about fire and eyes that watched him from the abyss. "We're digging too deep," he warned. "There's something down there." The first sacrifice. On the seventh day, the ground beneath the mine gave way, creating a deeper cavern. Inside, they found a lake of black, viscous liquid that shimmered like gold under their lanterns. Jesse leaned too close, and the ground collapsed further, sending him tumbling into the pool. Tom and Smitty rushed to pull him out, but Jesse was already gone, his screams echoing as he was swallowed by the dark. Ezekiel knelt by the edge, his face pale. "This isn't gold," he whispered. "This is sin." The survivors were shaken, but greed overpowered fear. "We can't leave it all behind," Tom insisted. "We owe it to Jesse to finish what we started." The transformation. As they continued to dig, the whispers turned into wails, and the shadows in the mine took on solid forms. Twisted, clawed figures that seemed to move closer with every flicker of their lanterns. Smitty began to change. His hands, once strong and calloused, grew black and brittle as if turning to stone. His eyes glazed over, and he began muttering in an unknown language. One night he vanished into the mine, his voice echoing in laughter that didn't sound human. They found his pickaxe embedded in the wall, and next to it, more of the strange carvings, this time fresh and bleeding. The final revelation. Tom and Ezekiel, the last survivors, descended into the mine one final time. The deeper they went, the more unnatural the mine became. The walls pulsed as if alive, and the air grew thick with the stench of sulfur. The lake of black liquid churned, and from its depths rose Jesse's face, his features twisted and grotesque. "Run," Ezekiel screamed, dragging Tom toward the surface. But the ground shook violently, and the mine began to collapse. They barely escaped, the entrance sealing behind them with a thunderous roar. Years later, Tom Calder, a broken man, wandered into a Barkerville saloon. His hair was white, his eyes hollow. He told his tale to anyone who would listen, though few believed him. He warned prospectors to stay away from the valley, calling it cursed. Ezekiel disappeared shortly after their escape, leaving behind a cryptic note: "The devil guards his gold, and the price is your soul." Locals say the mine still exists, hidden somewhere in the wilderness. Adventurers who seek it claim to hear whispers on the wind and see shadows in the trees. None who have found it have ever returned. Some say the mine is alive, waiting for its next victims. Others claim the Black Lake is a portal to something far worse, an ancient, malevolent force that guards its treasures with an insatiable hunger. Let me know if you'd like to add more details or twists. The Curse of Seamus O'Shane. Seamus O'Shane arrived in Barkerville with nothing but a pickaxe slung over one shoulder and a leather pouch dangling from his neck. He claimed it contained the luck of the Irish, gold dust from a land far across the sea. His thick brogue and tales of Ireland's emerald hills made him a popular, if eccentric, figure among the prospectors. But behind his tales of leprechauns and fairy gold was a palpable unease, as if Seamus was always watching over his shoulder. He settled on a claim along an isolated creek, deep in the woods where the trees loomed tall and the sunlight filtered through in sickly streaks. It wasn't long before rumours spread of his uncanny success. Seamus's gold pan seemed charmed, filling faster than anyone else's. Men accused him of salting his claim, but Seamus would just grin, his teeth yellowed and uneven, and reply, "The earth favours me. What's a man to do?" The first omen. The first sign of trouble came when Sam Thackeray, a miner from a neighbouring camp, decided to investigate Seamus's claim under the cover of darkness. Sam's body was found 3 days later, face down in the creek. His eyes were wide open, lips curled into an unnatural grin, and his hands clutching pebbles as if they were gold. The coroner called it a bad case of delirium, but the miners whispered otherwise. Seamus's claim, they said, was cursed. Seamus denied any involvement, though his face paled whenever Sam's name was mentioned. The once jovial Irishman became withdrawn, muttering to himself in Gaelic and refusing to let anyone near his land. At night, his lantern burned late, and passers-by claimed to hear voices, sometimes Seamus's, sometimes something else. The shadow at the creek. One moonless night, a prospector named Bill Hargrove decided to settle the mystery once and for all. Armed with a pistol and a bottle of whiskey for courage, Bill crept to Seamus's claim. The creek was eerily still, the air heavy with an unnatural quiet. As Bill crouched behind a boulder, he saw a figure by the water, smaller than a man but larger than a child. It wore a tattered green coat, its hair a fiery tangle that seemed to smoulder in the darkness. Bill's breath caught in his throat as the creature turned its head, revealing eyes like burning coals and a mouth full of jagged teeth. It wasn't alone. Seamus stood nearby, his face drawn and pale, trembling as he argued with the creature. "I gave you the gold back," Seamus hissed. "I kept my word." The creature's laughter was high and grating, like rusted metal scraping against stone. "Too late, Seamus. A deal's a deal. You'll guard it now. Forever." Before Bill could react, the creature turned its fiery gaze on him. His scream echoed through the forest, but no one came. Seamus's fate. The next day, Seamus's claim was deserted. His hat lay in the dirt, torn and streaked with blood. Gold dust glittered in the water, untouched and unclaimed. Miners avoided the area, and those brave or foolish enough to venture close often returned with tales of ghostly laughter, small footprints in the mud, and whispers in the trees. Some claimed Seamus had been taken by the creature, while others believed he had become part of it, his greed binding him to the land forever. The locals began calling the place Leprechaun Creek, a name that persists to this day. The modern-day encounter. Decades later, hikers and adventurers began exploring the forgotten corners of the Cariboo. One such group stumbled upon Leprechaun Creek and its strange, shimmering waters. One man, eager for a souvenir, scooped up a handful of gold flecks. That night, he vanished from his tent, leaving behind only his boots and a pouch of dust. His friends claimed they heard laughter in the distance, mingled with a faint Irish brogue saying, "Mine, it's all mine." Locals swear the leprechaun still roams the forest, guarding his cursed treasure. Those who seek it rarely return, and those who do are changed, haunted by dreams of glowing eyes and laughter that echoes in the dark. Let me know if you'd like to explore this story further, or add any. The Specter of Millwright Crossing. The setting. It was 1885, and the Canadian Pacific Railway was pushing through the untamed wilderness of British Columbia. The railroad was the lifeblood of the nation, a path to prosperity and progress. At Millwright Crossing, a remote section of track winding through dense forest and jagged cliffs, the work was grueling, the days long, and the nights haunted by the mournful cries of wolves and the distant rustle of unseen things. James Grady, the railway foreman, was a hard man, pragmatic and fearless. His crew respected him, though they whispered about his relentless drive to meet impossible deadlines. Grady brushed off their complaints. Delays cost money, and he didn't believe in superstition. But Millwright Crossing had its secrets, and it wasn't long before he came face to face with one of them. The first warning. One chilly evening, as the men packed up for the night, Grady stayed behind to review the plans for a tricky bridge they needed to finish. The moon hung low, casting eerie shadows over the half-completed structure. That's when he saw it, a figure standing on the tracks, shrouded in pale light. At first, Grady thought it was one of his workers. "Hey, you there, clear off," he shouted. The figure didn't move. As Grady approached, the air grew colder, and an unnatural stillness settled over the area. The man, if it was a man, wore a tattered suit and a conductor's cap, his face obscured by a thick mist that seemed to emanate from him. "Danger ahead," the figure said, its voice low and hollow. "The bridge will fail." Grady felt a chill run down his spine. "What are you talking about? It's solid." The Spectre raised a hand, pointing toward the half-built bridge. "If you continue, many will die." Before Grady could reply, the figure vanished, leaving only a faint wisp of mist in the moonlight. The price of safety. The next morning, Grady ordered his men to inspect the bridge. They discovered a fatal flaw in the structure, an unstable foundation that could have collapsed under the weight of a train. Reluctantly, Grady halted construction and delayed the project. But the delay came at a cost. The railway company docked the crew's wages, and morale plummeted. Grady shrugged it off, satisfied that he had done the right thing. A week later, the Spectre returned. This time it appeared as Grady was walking back to camp. "Another disaster comes," it intoned. "A landslide will bury your men." Grady's jaw tightened. "And what do you want me to do about it?" The figure's misty form seemed to flicker. "Warn them. Evacuate the area, but there is always a price." "What kind of price?" Grady demanded, but the Spectre faded before answering. Despite his skepticism, Grady followed the warning. He moved his men to a safer location, just hours before a massive rock slide obliterated their previous camp. The men were grateful, but whispers of Grady's deal with a ghost spread among the crew. Grady began to feel the weight of his choices. Each warning saved lives but brought setbacks, delays, lost wages, and growing resentment. The final warning. Months later, the railway was nearly complete. Millwright Crossing was bustling with activity, and the men were eager to finish the job and leave the cursed place behind. That's when the Spectre appeared for the third time, its pale glow more intense than ever. "This is your final warning," it said, its voice echoing unnaturally. "A train will derail. Many will perish." Grady clenched his fists. "What price this time? My crew can't take another delay." The Spectre tilted its head. "The price is yours." Grady froze. "Mine?" The figure nodded. "Your life, James Grady, for theirs." The decision. Grady spent the night wrestling with the Spectre's demand. He could dismiss the warning, risk the lives of his crew and passengers, or sacrifice himself to prevent the disaster. By dawn, his mind was made up. He ordered the workers to strengthen the rails and fortify the crossings, working tirelessly alongside them. When the work was complete, he stayed behind to inspect the tracks alone, ensuring every bolt was secure. As the first train rolled through Millwright Crossing, Grady stood by the tracks, watching the cars pass safely over the bridge. Relief flooded him, until he saw the Specter standing on the tracks ahead, its ghostly form flickering like a dying flame. Grady stepped forward, ready to confront it. But the train didn't stop. Its whistle shrieked as it barreled through him, and the foreman's body crumpled beneath the wheels. Epilogue. The train made it safely to its destination, and the workers spoke of Grady's courage and dedication. But when they searched the tracks for his body, there was no sign of it. Only the faint scent of smoke and the eerie sound of a train whistle fading into the distance. To this day, trains that cross Millwright Crossing report strange sightings. A ghostly figure walking the rails, inspecting the tracks, and ensuring their safety. Engineers swear they see James Grady's silhouette in the mist, forever bound to the crossing where he gave his life to save others. Would you like to expand?